The bridge of the Aurora's edge hummed with quiet energy as Captain Kim Woo-jin watched the stars streak past the main viewer. 3 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and every day still felt like a dream. His ship was proof of how far they had come. The sleek vessel carried technology that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. "Captain," called Dr. Park So-min from her station. Her fingers danced across the control panel as streams of data flowed across her screen. "We are approaching the temporal anomaly. All readings look normal so far." Woo-jin nodded and walked over to her station. So-min was the best physicist in the human fleet. If anyone could make sense of the strange readings they had detected near the Veil Nebula, it would be her. The anomaly had appeared 3 weeks ago, sending ripples through space-time that every sensor in the sector had picked up. "What do you think we are looking at?" Woo-jin asked. So-min pushed a strand of black hair behind her ear and frowned at her readings. "Something that should not exist, Captain. Time itself is bent here, twisted into shapes that make no sense according to our physics." From the engineering station, Lee Dong-ho looked up from his own screens. "The chronodrive is responding to whatever is out there. I have never seen readings like this before. It is almost like the drive wants to activate on its own." The chronodrive was humanity's greatest achievement in temporal science. It allowed ships to observe time streams and study temporal events without actually traveling through time. The technology was still experimental, but it had already helped them understand phenomena that had puzzled scientists for centuries. "Distance to the anomaly?" Woo-jin asked. 200,000 kilometers and closing," replied Navigator Han. Ji-woo, from his position at the helm. Woo-jin returned to his command chair and studied the main screen. Space looked normal ahead of them, but he knew that appearances could be deceiving. The universe was full of invisible forces that could tear a ship apart without warning. "All stop," he ordered. "Hold position here while we run a full sensor sweep." The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a slight shudder. Immediately, the screens filled with data as the sensors began their work. What they found made everyone on the bridge go quiet. "Captain," So-min said slowly, "you need to see this." She transferred her readings to the main screen. What appeared made Woo-jin grip the arms of his chair. The space ahead of them was not empty. Instead, there was a massive tear in reality itself. Through the tear, they could see glimpses of other times and places. Ancient stars that had died billions of years ago flickered in and out of view. Worlds that had never existed spun in impossible orbits around suns that burned with colors that had no names. "How is this possible?" whispered Dong-ho. "I do not know," So-min admitted. "But whatever caused this is beyond anything we have ever encountered. The energy readings are off every scale we have." Woo-jin stood and walked closer to the screen. Even through the ship's shields, he could feel something calling to him. It was not a sound or a voice, but something deeper. Something that seemed to speak directly to his soul. "Captain," Ji-woo called out, "we are getting a message from Galactic Command. They want us to maintain our distance and wait for reinforcements." "How long until they arrive?" 48 hours, sir." Woo-jin nodded but continued staring at the anomaly. In all his years as a captain, he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling him that waiting might be a mistake. The tear in space was growing larger with each passing minute. If they waited too long, it might become too dangerous to approach at all. "So-min, could we use the chronodrive to study this safely?" She looked up from her calculations. "Theoretically, yes. The observation chamber is designed to protect anyone inside from temporal effects. We could get readings that would help us understand what we are dealing with." But Woo-jin could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "But this is unlike anything the drive was designed to handle. We would be pushing into completely unknown territory." Dong-ho turned from his station. "Captain, The drive is built with multiple safety systems. Even if something goes wrong, the chamber should protect whoever is inside. Wu Jin made his decision. Prepare the chronodrive for observation mode. I will take the readings myself. Sir. With respect, should you not send someone else? So Min asked. If something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, I want to be responsible for my own choices, Wu Jin replied. Besides, as captain, it is my job to take the risks. The next hour was spent preparing the chronodrive. The observation chamber was a small room lined with sensors and protected by layers of temporal shielding. It allowed researchers to observe time, anomalies safely while the ship's computers recorded everything. As Wu Jin put on the protective suit, So Min approached him. Captain, promise me you will be careful. We still do not fully understand how time works. One mistake could ... I know, Wu Jin said gently. But someone has to do this. The anomaly is growing. If we do not act now, we might lose our chance to understand it. He entered the observation chamber and sealed the door behind him. The room was small and filled with monitoring equipment. Through the reinforced window, he could see the bridge crew at their stations. So Min gave him a thumbs up, and he returned the gesture. Chronodrive activation in 10 seconds. Dong Ho announced over the intercom. Wu Jin felt the familiar tingle as the temporal shields activated around the chamber. The sensation was like being wrapped in warm honey. Time itself seemed to slow down around him. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Activation. The chamber filled with soft blue light as the chronodrive engaged. Through the window, Wu Jin could see the anomaly responding to their probe. The tier in space began to pulse with the same blue light that surrounded him. Then something went wrong. The light grew brighter and brighter, until Wu Jin had to close his eyes. He felt the chamber shake violently, and alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Through the intercom, he could hear So Min shouting orders, but her voice seemed to be coming from very far away. The shaking grew worse. Wu Jin was thrown against the wall of the chamber as something grabbed hold of the ship. He tried to reach the emergency shutdown, but the blue light was now so bright that he could not see anything. In that moment of blindness and chaos, time seemed to stop completely. Wu Jin felt himself being pulled in a direction that did not exist. Not forward or backward, not up or down, but somewhere else entirely. His last clear thought before everything went white was of his crew. He hoped they would be safe. He hoped they would understand that he had tried to protect them. In the observation chamber, the light faded as suddenly as it had appeared. When So Min and Dong Ho rushed to check on their captain, they found the chamber empty except for his uniform lying neatly on the floor, burned into the metal wall. In perfect Korean characters were the words, "I will find my way back." But Kim, Wu Jin was gone, lost somewhere in the vast river of time itself. Kim Wu Jin opened his eyes to a sky filled with 3 moons. The air tasted different here, thick with moisture and strange scents he could not identify. His head pounded as he slowly sat up, trying to understand what had happened to him. Last thing he remembered was the blinding blue light in the observation chamber. Now he lay on soft grass beside a river that sparkled with an odd silver color. In the distance, he could see mountains that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Where am I? He whispered to himself. His uniform was gone, replaced by simple clothes made from some kind of rough cloth. Around his wrist was a metal band that hummed softly with energy. When he touched it, images flashed through his mind. He saw the temporal anomaly, felt himself being pulled through streams of time, and then ... arrival. Somehow he understood what had happened. The anomaly had not destroyed him. Instead, it had thrown him backward through time, far backward. The air itself felt ancient, and the stars in the sky were arranged in patterns he did not recognize. A sound made him turn around. 3 figures stood at the edge of the forest, watching him carefully. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like water. Their eyes were large and golden, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a language that sounded like music. Wu Jin could not understand the words, but somehow he felt their meaning. They were asking who he was and where he had come from. The metal band on his wrist grew warm, and suddenly he could speak their language. "I am Kim Wu Jin," he said slowly. "I come from very far away." The three beings looked at each other. The one who had spoken first tilted his head and studied Wu Jin with curious eyes. "You are not from this world," he said. "We can sense the time streams around you. You carry the scent of tomorrow. What are you?" Wu Jin asked. "We are the Cathari," the being replied. "And you, traveler from tomorrow, are either a gift or a curse. Time will tell which." Over the next few days, Wu Jin learned that he had arrived on a world called Veltar, 50,000 years before his own time. The Cathari were an ancient people who had mastered sciences that his own civilization was only beginning to understand. They lived in cities that floated above the ground, powered by energy drawn from the planet's core. The Cathari were not sure what to do with him. Some saw him as a threat, a disruption to the natural flow of time. Others were curious about the knowledge he carried from the future. A few seemed to understand that his arrival was not an accident. "The time streams brought you to us for a reason," said Elder Nethara, the oldest of the Cathari Wu Jin had met. Her skin was nearly transparent, and her eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. "But that reason may not be what you think. It is." Wu Jin spent his first months learning to survive in this strange new world. The Cathari provided him with basic shelter and food, but they made it clear that he would need to prove his worth if he wanted to stay among them. He began by sharing knowledge from his own time. He showed them simple medical techniques that could save lives, engineering principles that could improve their floating cities, and mathematical concepts that helped them understand the universe better. But as the months turned to years, Wu Jin realized that the Cathari already knew most of what he was teaching them. They had developed their own advanced sciences long before humanity had even learned to make fire. What they valued was not his knowledge, but his perspective. He thought about problems in ways they had never considered. "Your people approach the universe like children," Elder Nethara told him one day as they walked through one of the floating gardens. "Not because you are stupid, but because you still have wonder. We have lived so long that we sometimes forget to be amazed by simple things. Years passed, then decades. Wu Jin aged but slowly. The temporal radiation that had brought him here had changed his body in ways he did not fully understand. His hair began to show gray, but his strength remained. His mind grew sharper instead of slower as time went on. He learned the Cathari language perfectly. He studied their history, their science, their philosophy. Most importantly, he learned about time itself. The Cathari understood time not as a river flowing in one direction, but as an ocean with currents and depths that could be navigated if one knew how. "Time is not your enemy," Elder Nethara taught him. "It is a tool like any other. But like any powerful tool, it must be used with wisdom." After 50 years on Veltar, Wu Jin had a dream. He saw his ship, the Aurora's Edge, and his crew. Dr. Park So-min was older now, her hair white with age. She still worked at her station, still searched for some sign of her lost captain. The dream felt so real that he woke up with tears on his face. "You still wish to return," Elder Nethara said. She had appeared beside his bed without making a sound, as she often did. "Yes," Wu Jin admitted. "I made a promise. I will find my way back, even if returning means you will no longer be fully human." Wu Jin looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "You have been here for 50 years, child of tomorrow. In that time, you have learned our ways and absorbed our knowledge. You are no longer the man who fell through time. You are becoming something new. It was true. Wu Jin could feel the changes in himself. He could sense the flow of time around him now, could sometimes see glimpses of possible futures. When he concentrated, he could slow his perception of time or speed it up. These were not human abilities. Will I be able to go home? He asked. Elder Nethara smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human herself. Eventually. But first, you must learn everything we have to teach you. The universe is vast and dangerous, child. Your people will need a guardian who understands both their nature and the forces that threaten them. How long will that take? As long as it takes, she replied. Time, after all, is something we have plenty of. Wu Jin nodded and settled back into his bed. Outside his window, the 3 moons of Veltar shone down on the sleeping world. Somewhere in the distant future, his friends were still looking for him. Someday, he would find his way back to them, but first, he had centuries of learning ahead of him. 800 years had passed since Kim Wu Jin first opened his eyes on Veltar. His hair was now silver white, but his face showed only the lines of someone in middle age. The temporal energies that flowed through his body had changed him. In ways that still surprised him, he stood on the highest platform of the floating city of HFY, watching the sunrise paint the sky in colors that existed nowhere else in the universe. In his hand, he held a small device that hummed with contained power. It was a temporal compass, something the Kethori had spent 3 centuries teaching him to build. The readings are stronger today, said Elder Nethara, appearing beside him as quietly as always. She looked exactly the same as she had 800 years ago. The Kethari did not age as other species did. Something is coming, Wu Jin agreed. His voice carried harmonics now that had not been there before. When he spoke, sensitive listeners could hear echoes of other times, other possibilities. The time streams are becoming unstable. Over the centuries, Wu Jin had learned that his arrival on Veltar was not an accident. The temporal anomaly that had brought him here was just the first sign of something much larger and more dangerous. Forces from the far future were reaching backward through time, trying to change events that had already happened. The Kethari called these forces the Devourers. They came from a time when the universe was dying, when all the stars had burned out and only darkness remained. Instead of accepting their fate, they had learned to consume the past, feeding on earlier timelines to extend their own existence. They have found us again, Elder Nethara said. The scouts we sent to the outer time streams have not returned. Wu Jin nodded grimly. This was the 3rd attack in as many centuries. Each time, the Devourers grew stronger and more desperate. Each time, it took more effort to drive them back. How many worlds have we lost this time? He asked. 7 confirmed. Perhaps more. Elder Nethara's golden eyes reflected sadness that was older than most civilizations. The Velanash system is completely gone. It never existed now. Wu Jin closed his eyes and felt the loss like a physical pain. The Velanash had been a peaceful people who had spent their entire existence creating beautiful music that could be heard across dimensions. Now they had never been born. Their songs would never be sung. Only he and the Kethari remembered that they had ever existed at all. We cannot keep fighting them this way, Wu Jin said. Every battle costs us more than we can afford to lose. Which is why we must prepare you for what comes next, Elder Nethara replied. They walked together through the floating gardens where Wu Jin had spent so many years learning. Plants from 1,000 different worlds grew here, each one carefully tended by gardeners who understood the delicate balance between life and time. You have learned much in your centuries with us, Elder Nethara continued. You understand the flow of temporal currents. You can see the threads that connect all moments. You have even learned to step lightly between different streams of time. But it is not enough, Wu Jin said. It was not a question. No, to truly stand against the Devourers, you must become something more than human. more than Cathari, even. You must become a guardian of time itself. They stopped beside a pool that reflected not the sky above, but images of distant times and places. Wu Jin could see his own past in its depths, the moment when the chronodrive had malfunctioned and sent him here. He could also see possible futures, branching out like the limbs of an infinite tree. What would I have to give up? He asked. Elder Nethara was quiet for a long moment. Everything that makes you human and everything that makes you yourself. Your memories will become fluid, changing as you move through time. Your emotions will fade, replaced by the cold necessity of cosmic duty. Your connection to your own species will become as distant as starlight, and in return, power beyond measure. The ability to move freely through time and space. Knowledge of all that was, is, and could be. The strength to stand against forces that could unmake reality itself. Wu Jin stared into the pool, watching images of his old crew flash by. So Min, her face lined with worry as she searched for traces of her lost captain. Dongho, now an old man but still working to improve human technology. They had never stopped looking for him. There is another choice, Elder Nethara said softly. You could return to your own time as you are now. You have learned enough to help your people prepare for what is coming. But you would go back knowing that you chose your humanity over the safety of the universe. How long do I have to decide? The Devourers will reach your timeline within the next few decades. If you are going to return, it must be soon. That night, Wu Jin walked alone through the city. Kethval was beautiful in the moonlight, its floating spires glowing with soft energy. He had spent 8 centuries here, longer than most species existed. This place had become his home in ways that Earth never could be again, but it was not his true home. That was with his crew, his friends, his people. They were facing a danger they could not even imagine, and he was the only one who could warn. Then he found Elder Nethara in the Hall of Echoes, a place where the sounds of all times could be heard if one listened carefully. She was sitting in meditation, her form surrounded by gentle light. I have made my choice, Wu Jin said. She opened her eyes and looked at him. I know. I could feel your decision forming like a storm in the time streams. I want to go home. But I want to go home with the power to protect them. Even knowing what it will cost you. Wu Jin thought of So-Min's face, of Dongho's loyalty, of all the humans who would live and die without ever knowing that their existence hung by such a thin thread. Yes, even knowing. Elder Nethara stood and placed her hand on his shoulder. Then let us begin. The transformation will take time, and it will not be pleasant. You will lose yourself piece by piece, and only your will can determine what remains when the process is complete. Will I still remember them? My crew? Some things are too fundamental to be erased, she said. Love, properly anchored, can survive even the dissolution of the self. Hold to that, child of tomorrow. Let it be your anchor in the storm of change. The transformation began that very night. Wu Jin lay in a chamber filled with temporal energies while the Kethari worked to reshape his very being. Pain beyond description racked his body as his cells were restructured on a quantum level. But worse than the physical pain was the slow erosion of his memories. Childhood moments faded first, then adolescent experiences, then years of his adult life. He fought to hold on to the important things, the faces of his friends, the promise he had made to return. Days passed, or perhaps years. Time had no meaning in the transformation chamber. Wu Jin felt himself becoming something vast and strange, a being that existed partially outside of normal reality. When it was finally over, he stood and looked at his hands. They appeared normal, but he could see the temporal energies flowing through them like rivers of light. He was still Kim Wu Jin, but he was also something far more powerful and far more alone. How do you feel? Elder Nethara asked. Wu Jin smiled, and the expression carried weight that made reality tremble slightly. Different, but still myself, I think. and ready to go home. Then it is time, she said. Your people need their guardian. Dr. Park So-min stood in her laboratory aboard Temporal Research Station Prometheus, staring at readings that made no sense. For 2 years since Captain Kim Woo-jin had vanished, she had dedicated her life to finding some trace of him. The station orbited the exact spot where the Aurora's edge had encountered the temporal anomaly. Another false alarm? Asked Dr. Lee Dong-ho as he entered the lab. His hair was now streaked with gray, and his face showed the weight of sleepless nights spent searching for their lost friend. No, So-min whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and fear. This is different. The temporal readings are off every scale we have. Outside the station's main viewport, space itself began to ripple like water. The stars seemed to bend and twist as reality warped around a point of impossible brightness. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the station as sensors overloaded, trying to measure what was happening. All personnel to emergency stations, came the announcement over the intercom. Massive temporal event in progress. But So-min could not move. She watched in amazement as the ripples in space grew larger and brighter. Deep in her heart, she knew what was happening. After 2 years of searching, Kim Woo-jin was coming home. The brightness reached a peak that should have been blinding. But somehow it was gentle on the eyes. When it faded, a figure stood in space where nothing had been before. He wore simple clothes and moved with a grace that seemed to bend reality around him. Sensors are detecting a human life form, reported. The station's a eye, but the readings are ... unusual. So-min pressed her face against the viewport. Even across the vast distance of space, she could see him clearly. It was Woo-jin, but changed in ways that made her heart race with both joy and terror. He looked at the station and smiled, and that smile carried such warmth and power that every person on board felt it in their soul. Then he was on the station, appearing in the corridor outside So-min's lab, without any sign of how he had traveled there. The air around him shimmered with barely contained energy, and when he walked, his footsteps left brief impressions of light on the floor. "Hello, So-min," he said, and his voice carried harmonics that spoke of vast distances and endless time. "I told you I would find my way back." So-min stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Woo-jin, is it really you?" "It is me," he replied gently, "but I am also more than I was. I have traveled a long road to return to you." Dong-ho arrived at a run, skidding to a stop when he saw the figure in the corridor. "Captain, how is this possible? Where have you been?" "Far away," Woo-jin said, "and long ago. I have much to tell you, old friends, and little time to tell it." They gathered in the station's main conference room, along with the other senior staff. Woo-jin sat at the head of the table, and everyone could feel the weight of authority that surrounded him now. When he spoke, his words carried the certainty of someone who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "I was thrown backward through time," he began, 50,000 years into the past, to a world called Veltar. There I met the Kethari, an ancient people who had mastered time itself. As he told his story, the others listened in growing amazement and fear. 800 years of learning. Battles against forces that consumed entire timelines. His transformation into something beyond human understanding. "The Devourers are coming," he said finally. "They will reach our timeline within months. When they arrive, they will try to erase our entire history, feeding on our timeline to extend their own dying existence." "What can we do?" So-min asked. Her scientific mind was reeling from everything she had heard. "We can fight," Woo-jin replied. "But not as we are now. Humanity must evolve, must become something more than we have ever been before." He stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. "I have returned with all eyes. The Cathari have agreed to emerge from their hidden places and stand with us. But even with their help, victory is not certain. As if summoned by his words, more ripples appeared in space around the station. Ships materialized, their design unlike anything the humans had ever seen. They were graceful and organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. Cathari vessels, Wu Jin explained. They have been preparing for this battle for thousands of years. The largest of the ships sent a message to the station. On the main screen appeared the image of Elder Nethera, her golden eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "Greetings, children of Earth," she said in perfect human speech. "We come at the request of your guardian, the one you call Kim Wu Jin. He has earned our respect and our friendship over the centuries." So Min looked at Wu Jin with new understanding. "Guardian? It is what I have become," he said simply. "What I had to become to protect you all." Over the next few hours, more ships arrived. Human vessels from across the solar system, drawn by emergency signals. Alien ships from species that had rumors of the approaching threat. Even the proud Galactic Council sent a delegation, though their representatives were clearly uncomfortable with the idea that humanity might be central to this crisis. "You ask us to believe an impossible story," said Counselor Vexahan, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. "Time-traveling devourers from the future, ancient guardians? It sounds like fiction." Wu Jin turned to face the counselor, and for a moment his human disguise seemed to slip. The beings in the room could see him as he truly was now, a figure of immense power wrapped in temporal energies that made reality bend around him. "Look into the deep sensors," he said calmly. "Tell me what you see approaching from the edge of space-time." Vexahan's expression changed as he accessed the readings. His 4 arms began to tremble as he saw the massive distortions moving toward their region of space. "By the ancient codes," he whispered, "something is coming." "Something vast," the Devourers, Wu Jin confirmed. "They will be here within days." The gathered fleet representatives looked at each other with growing alarm. The scale of the threat was becoming clear. "What do you need from us?" asked Admiral Chun from the human fleet. "Everything," Wu Jin replied. "Every ship, every weapon, every ounce of courage you can muster. But most importantly, you must trust me. I have walked this path before, in other timelines. I know what must be done. And if we fail?" Counselor Vexahan asked. Wu Jin's smile was soft, but carried the weight of cosmic authority. "We will not fail. Humanity has never learned how to give up, and I have had 800 years to plan for this moment." He moved to the center of the room, and suddenly everyone could see images in the air around him. Battle plans, weapon configurations, formations that would allow the combined fleet to fight enemies that existed partially outside of normal reality. "The battle will be unlike anything you have ever seen," he said. "We will be fighting not just for our lives, but for the right of our timeline to exist at all. Some of you will not survive, but those who do will know that they helped save not just our universe, but all possible universes." As the fleet prepared for the coming battle, So Min found herself alone with Wu Jin in an observation lounge. Through the viewport, she could see the organized chaos of ships taking their positions. "Are you still human?" she asked quietly. Wu Jin considered the question carefully. "I am what humanity needed me to become. I remember being human. I remember what it felt like to be afraid, to doubt, to hope. Those memories guide me even now. And after the battle? What then?" He looked at her with eyes that had seen the birth and death of stars. "After the battle, if we survive, I will help humanity take its place among the true powers of the universe. We are young, but we have something that older species have lost. We still believe in impossible things, like traveling through time to save everyone we care about." Wu Jin's smile was gentle and very human, exactly like that. Outside, the first scouts reported contact with the approaching Devourers. The battle for all of time was about to begin. The Devourers came like a storm made of darkness and hunger, They emerged from the edges of space-time itself, creatures that existed in the spaces between moments. To look at them directly was to see the death of everything that had ever been, or ever could be. Kim Woo-jin stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmony, a joint human Cathari vessel that had been built specifically for this battle. Around him, the combined fleet of dozens of species waited for his command. He could feel the fear of every crew member, their doubt, their desperate hope. "Contact in 30 seconds, reported the tactical officer. Woo-jin closed his eyes and reached out with senses that had been honed over 8 centuries. He could feel the devourers approaching, their hunger so vast it made reality itself sick. But he could also feel something else. Deep within their twisted forms, he sensed the remnants of what they had once been. Long ago they had been people, too, faced with the death of their universe and desperate to survive. "All ships, hold position," he commanded. His voice carried across the fleet through quantum communication arrays, reaching every vessel simultaneously. "Remember, we are not just fighting for our survival. We are fighting for theirs as well, sir." Dr. Park So-min looked at him from her station. "What do you mean?" Before Woo-jin could answer, the devourers struck. They moved through normal space like knives through paper, their very presence causing stars to flicker and die. The fleet's weapons opened fire, but the energy beams passed through the creatures as if they were made of shadow. "Conventional weapons are useless," called out Lee Dong-ho from the engineering station. "They exist in too many dimensions at once." "No," Woo-jin replied calmly. "Begin Phase 2. The Cathari ships moved into formation around the human vessels. Their organic hulls began to glow with temporal energy, creating a web of protective force that held the devourers at bay. But it was only a temporary measure. "They are adapting," Elder Neth Ara reported from her ship. "Our defenses will not hold for long." Woo-jin stepped forward to the center of the bridge. "Lower all shields around me." "Captain, that is suicide," So-min protested. "Trust me," he said, and his smile carried such certainty that her objections died in her throat. The shields around Woo-jin dropped, and immediately the influence of the devourers washed over him. He felt their hunger, their desperation, their endless need to consume. But instead of being overwhelmed, he opened his mind to them completely. "I know what you are," he said, and his words somehow reached across the battlefield to the creatures that had once been people. "I know why you do this. You are afraid. Your universe is dying, and you cannot accept the end." The devourers' attack faltered. For the first time in eons, they heard a voice that spoke to them with understanding rather than fear. "But consuming other timelines will not save you," Woo-jin continued. "It will only delay the inevitable while destroying everything beautiful that ever existed." He raised his hands, and temporal energy flowed from him like water. But instead of attacking, he began to show the devourers something they had never seen before. Images filled the space between the fleets, pictures of what could be instead of what was. "You have the power to reshape reality itself," he said. "Instead of consuming the past, you could create new futures. Instead of being destroyers, you could become builders." The largest of the devourers, a creature that spanned several kilometers, began to change. Its form shifted from something hungry and desperate to something that still carried traces of the civilization it had once been. "We tried," it said, its voice like the whisper of dying stars. "We tried to save our universe. But death comes for everything in the end." "Death comes for everything," Woo-jin agreed. "But that does not mean we stop creating, stop loving, stop hoping. The universe may end, but the things we build and the connections we make give meaning to the time we have." He stepped forward, and somehow he was no longer on the bridge but floating in space itself, protected by energies that were beyond human understanding. "I offer you a choice. Continue consuming timelines until you are the only things left in a universe of shadows. Or join us in creating something new. What do you offer?" The Devourer asked. Partnership, Wu Jin replied. Your power combined with our creativity. Together we could build new universes, new possibilities, new forms of existence that could survive even the heat death of reality itself. The battle stopped completely as every ship in both fleets watched the conversation between the human who had become something more and the creature that had once been entire civilization. You would trust us? The Devourer asked. After what we have done? I would give you the chance to be better than what you have become, Wu Jin said. Everyone deserves a second chance, even those who have forgotten what they were before they became what they are now. The Devourer was silent for a long moment, then slowly it began to change. Its form became less twisted, more like the proud beings it had once been. Around it, the other Devourers began to transform as well. We accept, it said finally. But we do not know how to be anything other than what we are. Then we will learn together, Wu Jin replied. And we will start by undoing the damage that has been done. Over the next few hours, something unprecedented happened. The Devourers began to restore the timelines they had consumed. Worlds that had been erased from existence flickered back into reality. The Velanash system returned, and with it the beautiful music that had been silenced for so long. But the restoration came at a cost. The Devourers had to give up much of their power, transforming from cosmic destroyers into something closer to what they had been before their universe began to die. It is finished, the lead Devourer said. It now appeared as a tall, graceful being with skin like starlight. We have returned what we took, but we are weak now, vulnerable. Then we will protect you, Wu Jin said simply. That is what allies do. As the crisis ended, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness the formation of the Temporal Covenant. It was an alliance unlike any that had ever existed, bringing together species from across time and space to guard against threats that could endanger reality itself. Wu Jin stood before the assembled delegates, no longer hiding what he had become. His form shifted between human and something far more cosmic, but his smile remained gentle and unmistakably his own. Today we have learned that even the greatest enemies can become the greatest allies, he said. The universe is vast and full of wonders we cannot imagine. But it is also fragile, and it needs guardians who will protect it not through fear, but through understanding. Dr. Park So-min watched from the audience as her old captain spoke. He was no longer the man she had served with on the Aurora's edge, but she could still see traces of him in every gesture, every word. After the ceremony, she found him standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Do you regret it? She asked. Giving up your humanity for this? Wu Jin turned to her, and for a moment he looked exactly as he had 2 years ago. I did not give up my humanity, he said. I expanded it. Everything I learned, everything I became, it was all so I could come back and protect the people I love. And now? Now I have work to do. The universe is full of wonders, but also dangers. Species that need guidance, threats that need to be stopped, mysteries that need to be solved. He paused and smiled. But I will not do it alone. Humanity has earned its place among the stars, and you will be my partners in everything that comes next. So men looked out at the fleet of ships. Human and alien vessels working together in ways that would have been impossible just days before. What happens to us now? You explore, Wu Jin said. You learn, you grow, you become everything you were meant to be. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and she could feel the warmth of genuine affection beneath the cosmic power. And sometimes, when you need help with something truly impossible, you call on your guardian. Will you be happy? She asked. Wu Jin considered the question as he had learned to do over 8 centuries of existence. I will be what I need to be, he said finally. And I will carry the memory of what it means to be human with me always. That will be enough. As the fleet prepared to disperse, carrying news of the Temporal Covenant to every corner of the galaxy. Wu Jin remained on the observation deck. He had kept his promise. He had found his way back. And now, wearing the centuries-like armor but still smiling softly, he was ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring. The long road home had ended. The longer road ahead was just beginning. In the distance, a new star was being born, its light carrying the promise of infinite possibilities. Wu Jin watched it shine and knew that, whatever came next, humanity would face it with the same stubborn hope that had carried one lost captain through 800 years of exile. And back again, the universe was vast and full of wonders. And humanity, guided by their guardian, was ready to explore every one of them.